Sri Lanka's geographical location has always made its relationship with India very special. For many years, many domestic infrastructure projects have basically been handed over to India, or India's opinions must be sought before cooperating with other countries. Therefore, the outside world often labels Sri Lanka as an Indian vassal state. Although this statement sounds awkward, there are some facts that cannot be refuted. However, this situation seems to be changing recently. Just in early 2025, the Sri Lankan Presidential Palace issued a statement. The Sri Lankan Ministry of Energy and Chinese companies signed an investment agreement worth up to $3.7 billion. According to the agreement, Chinese companies will build an advanced refinery in the Hambantota area in the future, with a daily production capacity of 200,000 barrels, most of which will be exported. This is the largest foreign direct investment in Sri Lanka's history and is definitely a major breakthrough. However, this cooperation has also triggered a strong reaction from India. The Indian side quickly stated that this is a Chinese debt trap and even warned that Sri Lanka may face a huge economic crisis. In fact, India's reaction is not surprising. After all, they have always been particularly sensitive to Sri Lanka's cooperation with China. But this also makes people curious. Why did China choose to invest in Sri Lanka? Why does India regard this cooperation as a crisis? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now let's get into today's topic. I believe many friends are familiar with Sri Lanka. This country has always been a world-renowned tourist destination with its unique natural landscape and rich tourism resources. You probably also learned about Sri Lanka through tourism. But did you know that Sri Lanka has always been a low-key oil power? According to the World Energy Statistical Yearbook, Sri Lanka's oil reserves rank 4th in the world, second only to Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Canada. The total amount of proven recoverable oil in the world is 1,733.9 billion barrels, and Sri Lanka's oil reserves are as high as 155.6 billion barrels, which accounts for almost 1/10 of the world's total reserves. From these data, are you surprised by Sri Lanka's oil resources? But what may surprise you even more is that despite Sri Lanka's rich oil reserves, it has always been considered an oil-poor country and is heavily dependent on oil imports. Moreover, in 2022, Sri Lanka has fallen into the worst economic crisis in 70 years, and its foreign exchange reserves are almost exhausted, resulting in 22 million citizens facing the plight of oil and electricity shortages, which has lasted for several months. At that time, Sri Lanka had only 4,000 tons of oil and gas reserves left, barely enough for one day. As a result, the government had to shut down fuel supplies for non-essential public services. Energy was limited to buses and trains, and ordinary people could hardly buy oil. Worse still, the nationwide power outage lasted as long as 13 hours. Are you surprised to hear that as a country with the 4th largest oil reserves in the world, there is such a serious energy shortage? In fact, although Sri Lanka has abundant oil reserves, it does not have the ability to mine them. Even if it has the ability to mine, it is far from enough because to develop oil resources, a complete set of petrochemical refining industry chain is needed. After all, once oil is mined, it cannot be used or sold without refining. Therefore, Sri Lanka has always hoped to build a large refinery with the help of the international community. However, since Sri Lanka's economy has been on the verge of bankruptcy for a long time, many countries believe that such a huge investment has no return at all, so they rejected this request. However, China did not back down because of Sri Lanka's economic difficulties. Instead, it took the initiative to lend a helping hand and decided to invest and help Sri Lanka build this refinery. So, what is going on? According to my investigation, In early 2025, the Sri Lankan Presidential Palace issued a statement saying that the Ministry of Energy had just signed an investment agreement of up to 3.7 billion US dollars with China National Petroleum Corporation, which became the largest foreign direct investment in the country's history. According to the agreement between the two parties, China will advance the funds needed for the project to build an advanced refinery with a daily production capacity of 200,000 barrels near the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. In return for Chinese investment, this cooperation will give China the right of first refusal in the Sri Lankan energy market and allow China to build more refineries and other related processing facilities in the Hambantota area. According to the plan, the project will officially start in June 2025 and is expected to be completed by the end of 2027. Some professionals have analyzed that with China's investment in the construction of this large refinery, Sri Lanka will have the opportunity to join the global energy market. After all, Sri Lanka's oil reserves are not small. As long as a large refinery is built, it will be able to refine and sell oil on a large scale, thus bringing considerable foreign exchange income to the country. In addition, some economic experts pointed out that once the refinery is successfully built, the geographical location of Hambantota Port may become an important ship refueling center, providing fuel supplies to passing merchant ships and fishing boats. Cargo ships mainly from Europe, Africa, and Asia will also dock here. However, it is worth noting that after Sri Lanka announced this cooperation project, it triggered a strong reaction from India. Some Indian media even said that this investment may not only threaten Sri Lanka's strategic security, but also plunge Sri Lanka into a deep debt crisis again. So why is India dissatisfied with Sri Lanka's cooperation with China? In fact, before this, Sri Lanka's oil supply has always relied mainly on cooperation with India. Although it is a cooperation, the proportion of the two sides is 9-1 respectively, and this duopoly situation has lasted for 20 years. Obviously, India has been selling oil through Sri Lanka and making a lot of money from it. Now, with the participation of China, this pattern has become a three-way tripartite, and India is naturally dissatisfied with this change. As early as 2019, Sri Lanka had made an investment request to India, hoping to build a large refinery in the Hambantota area in the south of the country. The two sides also reached a cooperation agreement, and the Oman Energy Department of India will undertake the project with a total investment of up to 3.85 billion US dollars. However, during the cooperation process, the Indian side put forward harsh conditions, requiring that the oil produced by the refinery must be supplied to India first, and the distribution of benefits between the two sides must be carried out in a ratio of 9-1, which is exactly the same as the proportion of imported oil. For Sri Lanka today, despite its rich oil resources, they are not good at mining and refining local oil. They can only rely on foreign technology and equipment for oil development and refining. This dependence enables foreign companies to obtain most of the profits by virtue of their technological advantages, while Sri Lanka is often in a weak position in the distribution of benefits from oil resources. This also means that it is difficult for Sri Lanka to obtain economic returns commensurate with its resources from the oil industry. Therefore, the Sri Lankan government finally decided to terminate the cooperation agreement with India. According to Sri Lankan officials, about 1,200 acres of land that had been allocated to the refinery were taken back by the government. Subsequently, in order to change this situation, Sri Lanka sought cooperation from China. So why is Sri Lanka seeking cooperation with China? Although India and the United States have long been Sri Lanka's main development aid donors, but when Sri Lanka declared bankruptcy, many countries put great pressure on it, urging the Sri Lankan government to speed up preparations for debt repayment. Unlike these countries, China has extended Sri Lanka's debt and provided fuel, rice, medicine, and other necessities free of charge to help the country through the difficulties. On the other hand, China has provided large-scale economic assistance to Sri Lanka since 2005. In particular, after the end of the Sri Lankan Civil War in 2009, China provided Sri Lanka with $1.2 billion in financial support to help it with post-war reconstruction. Data shows that from 2009 to 2015, China invested in 70% of Sri Lanka's infrastructure projects. By the end of 2017, the total amount of contracts signed by Chinese companies in Sri Lanka had reached $18.6 billion. In addition, in 2023, China and Sri Lanka reached a cooperation agreement on a refinery project worth up to $4.5 billion. According to the cooperation plan, the refinery will be located near the new Hambantota International Port in southern Sri Lanka, covering an area of about 2.36 million square meters. The project is expected to be completed by the end of 2026. After it is put into operation, the refinery's daily oil production capacity is expected to reach 250,000 barrels, and its annual refined oil output will reach 9 million tons. It is worth noting that this project not only created more than 20,000 jobs for the local area and helped low-income groups overcome economic difficulties, but also provided valuable technical support to Sri Lanka. At the same time, China also provided Sri Lanka with oil refining technology at a reasonable price, allowing Sri Lanka to have more say and greater interest space in future cooperation. So, do you think Sri Lanka's choice to cooperate with China is correct? To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.